Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, December 4th, and our friend Laith Marouf from Beirut is here with us. Welcome back, Laith.
Great to be with you, Nina.
Let's get started, Laith, with the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel. The day that you've learned about it, there is a new front in Syria. What's your understanding? What's your take? And how do they feel in Lebanon about what's going on in Syria?
Well, the people here in Lebanon were a little bit relieved for the ceasefire. Within, half an hour, everybody was driving back to their town at 4 a.m. in the morning and looking for their homes, what happened to them, and so on. And obviously, that celebration got immediately ruined with this attack on Syria within 2 hours of the ceasefire coming into effect in Lebanon, and of course the continued violations of Lebanese sovereignty by the Zionists. Yesterday there was 11 martyrs in the south of Lebanon, and the Israelis keep on actually invading and pushing further closer to the Litani River. In terms of the situation in Syria, everybody can see that this attack by the Wahhabi death squads in Idlib on Aleppo was timed by the Zionists and the US to coincide with this ceasefire. And I think the whole empire believes that because Hezbollah is weakened and is busy with defending South Lebanon, that they can't come to the defense of Syria. Some of our viewers may remember the last battle in 2016 in the Idlib area was a bone-crushing battle. That was the Hezbollah with the Syrian military on one side against the Turkish military and the Wahhabi death squads, and the Turkish military was being slaughtered at the time, and Russia stepped in and forced a ceasefire. And today we're seeing the results of that ceasefire, really, because the death squads were not dealt with. Then now Syria is suffering because of this. And this is why we see Russia doing all it can to defeat the invasion of Aleppo, to make up for that mistake of trusting Erdogan to accept and implement this ceasefire correctly.
As you mentioned, there was an agreement between Iran, Russia, and Syria in 2020. And in your opinion, what has happened in Turkey that they have decided to go with this plan right after the ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel? Because it's unbelievable. They know how important Syria is for Lebanon and how important Lebanon is for Gaza, for Palestine. And at the end of the day, Erdogan, if you remember, Erdogan was talking about before Israel invading Lebanon, he was talking, I'm going to send the Turkish army to support Lebanon. And right now he's doing this. Do you understand the behavior on the part of Erdogan?
Yeah, I do understand it. I mean, for me, he's a clown. He's a sock puppet, and what we have. The way we judge people is not by their words; we judge them by their actions. And clearly, the words of Erdogan are in total opposition to his actions. Even during the genocide in Gaza, he was saying a lot of things that are critical of the Zionist colony and calling them war criminals, whatever. But at the same time, he was the main supplier for oil products to the Zionist colony. And without that oil, the Azerbaijani oil and the looted Syrian and Iraqi oil that was smuggled through Turkey to the Zionist colony over the last 14 months, the Israeli war machine would have come to a halt. There's nobody that could have replaced that oil supply that Turkey was delivering. And so clearly during the genocide in Gaza, the most complicit country in the region with this genocide was Turkey. And the same thing about when he was talking about Lebanon, we're going to send military to defend Lebanon. That is just propaganda. At the same time, if Turkey wanted to do anything, it could have stopped the movement of Israeli ships, warships across the coast of Syria. You know, you remember a few years ago when Turkey sent all those gas and oil excavators in the Eastern Mediterranean and sent with them all these warships and threatened Cyprus and threatened Egypt and Israel and Greece and did whatever it wanted to in the Eastern Mediterranean. So it could have done that. If it wanted, it could have stopped the use of those waterways to bombard Lebanon and to besiege it. So now, you know, once we had kind of analyzed the actions of Turkey and Erdogan, it makes sense that he is now attacking Syria and allowing these Wahhabi death squads to invade Aleppo region. You know, we know now that 2 months ago, the Ukrainian intelligence with the French intelligence, Turkish intelligence, and the Wahhabi death squads met in Bab el Hawa border crossing north of Aleppo and plotted what we see today happening. And currently on the ground, there's Ukrainian special forces inside Aleppo, and they are helping the Wahhabi death squads use Ukrainian drones. Really, they are Turkish drones manufactured in Ukraine under license. And that all of that couldn't have happened without the direct involvement of Erdogan in this. And I think, you know, Russia and Iran, in a way, got fooled over the last 5-6 years, attempting to think that they can change Erdogan and Turkey, move them out of the sphere of influence of the US and NATO, which is a impossibility because of the huge presence of NATO on the ground in Turkey and the presence of American nuclear missiles inside Turkey. So, you know, I think the Russian and Iranian governments and military right now have to look back at the decisions that they made years ago and figure out how can they make it up to Syria because of those failures.
What do we know about these, they call it Syrian rebels, but many of them are not Syrians. Who are these people?
This is the remnants of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, huge amounts of mercenaries from specifically Central Asia, meaning, you know, Uyghur, Turkmen, Uzbek, and Chechen fighters, as well as we've been seeing right now videos coming out of these Pakistani British citizens that are on the ground killing and raping and pillaging. So that's the vast majority of the elite units that are fighting. And then you have all the Syrian mercenaries, people that have been living in Idlib for the last 10 years and have no other work opportunities but to become mercenaries. You know, these fighters have been engaged inside Ukraine. As we know, Ukraine paid them to come and fight against Russia, and then now they're being brought back to Syria, and that could only happen through Turkish territory. They're going back and forth across the border under the direction of the Turkish intelligence services and the Turkish military. So that's the vast majority of them. They are mainly Wahhabi, meaning they believe anybody who's outside that cult is a heretic. They want to kill every other Muslim that doesn't believe in that cult. And you know, anybody from any other religion. We saw already multiple videos of killings of Syrian soldiers and you know, attacks on religious sites inside Aleppo and around Aleppo. We saw them also target specifically the Shia population around Aleppo in both Nubul and Zahra, those two villages just north of Aleppo. They had to be evacuated, but these people walked all the way from Aleppo to the Syrian military bases south of the city to be able to be rescued. This is what we know in general about it, and of course the financing of all of this is coming from the Gulf countries. In fact, I would venture and say the genocide in Palestine is financed with Gulf money. The Americans and the Israelis don't have that much of easy flow of money now, being overstretched in wars across the world.
In your opinion, the main goal of this attack on their part, it was a surprise attack. It seems to me that Iran, Russia, they were all surprised by this attack on the part of Erdogan. And do you think the main goal is to capture some land? I don't know, Hama, Homs, or these parts of Syria, or they want to overthrow, the main goal is to overthrow the government in Syria? Because that would be delusional if they're thinking that way.
Yeah, so we know that according to Israeli media, that last month the Emiratis and the Saudis approached the Syrian government and said that they can guarantee the lifting of sanctions and the blockade on Syria if the Syrian government cuts its relations with Iran and stops the flow of weapons to Hezbollah and the Palestinian resistance factions. So the Syrian government refused that, as it did in 2011, 2012. That was the same offer given to Syria before the invasion of Syria happened and the attacks by the Wahhabi Contras in the 2011, 2012. And this is the same offer given to Syria in 2005 and 2006. When Condoleezza Rice was threatening to invade Syria after and before the war on Lebanon in 2006. So this is a continuous approach by the West to Syria. We will starve you, we will blockade you, and or lift it if you agree to give up on the resistance in the region. And Syria has refused every time, the Syrian government and the Syrian military. And this is, the Syrian people and the Syrian state has paid the highest price in the whole region for support of Palestinian rights and for the support of the resistance in general. So what we see now is their attempt to, these Wahhabi Contras, their attempt was to reach Homs. And once you reach Homs, you blockade the north of Lebanon, the Beqa Valley, where there, could be a main route for resupplying of Hezbollah. This is what they want. And once you do that, you also cut off the coast of Syria from Damascus and the heartlands of Syria. And the coast of Syria has, larger minority populations like the Alawi and Christian populations there, which will be basically besieged and separated from the capital, and the capital will have no exit to the sea anymore, no exit route for the sea. So even if they didn't want to, depose President Assad, their main goal is to stop the resupply of the resistance in Lebanon. And so they may not want to occupy Damascus if they reach Homs. But all of this is obviously delusional talk, because the Iranian and Russian military forces are going to do everything in their power to make sure that this plan doesn't succeed. But let's put this in a bigger picture. Trump is going to be the emperor on January 20th. He has promised to make everybody pay hell in the region if the Israeli prisoners of war are not released by then. And so let's look at it in this calendar. If Iran and Russia are not able to clear these Wahhabi death squads before the coming of Trump, Iran and Russia will be overstretched and will not be able to defend Iran itself, which will come under attack by Trump. So the the whole plan of the empire, even if it cannot succeed in capturing Homs and cutting the supply route, is to at least overstretch the axis of resistance and make it unable to defend the major base, which is Iran. Iran is the backbone of the axis of resistance, and Trump and Netanyahu want a war on Iran in the beginning of Trump's presidency. So I don't know what is going to be the counter plan of the axis of resistance, but I think if they are smart enough in their planning, they would go full out and destroy as much of the Wahhabi death squads on the ground in Syria and go on the offensive against the Zionist colony as fast as possible, so that the battleground is returned to be historical Palestine and not the territories of the countries involved in the axis of resistance.
Yeah. And the way that you have mentioned, you've described the situation, I was wondering what's the gain for Turkey in the whole situation? Because if Gaza, if Palestine is suffering right now, and you're trying to weaken Iran, what would be the gain for Turkey? It's a political gain for them?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday the head of the Nationalist Party in Turkey, which is in coalition with Erdogan and is the main competitor, but they're still in competition, they had a conference for their party, and he gave a speech about how Aleppo is Turkish, and that Turkey without Aleppo is not Turkey. And and was praising, and he had a standing ovation about the lifting of the Turkish flag over the fort of Aleppo in the middle of the city, in the old city. So that gives you an idea of what we're really talking about. Why would Turkey want to do this? Turkey has always wanted to take Aleppo as part of its territory because, when we go back to Ottoman times, there was nothing important in Turkey other than Istanbul. It is, the capitals of commerce and culture are Aleppo and Mosul. And prior to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the Turks wanted to make sure that they can maintain these cities and attempted to build multiple settlements of Turkish settlers, like in a line all the way from Turkey, the Taurus Mountains, all the way to Jerusalem and all the way to Baghdad, and they didn't succeed. And this is why we have some Turkoman populations, for instance, in the north of Syria and or in the north of Iraq. These are settlers that were installed there in the late 1800s, early 1900s, just before the breakout of World War I. So Turkey has these ambitions to recapture these cultural hubs and commerce hubs of Mosul and Aleppo. And on the other hand, as long as Syria is sovereign, and the Syrian people remember that they were ethnically cleansed from Iskenderun, from Adana, from Diyarbakir, from Mardin, which are all in reality Syrian territories that were handed over by the French in 1930 to Turkey against the will of the local population, and there was a mass ethnic cleansing and expulsion campaign by the Turkish authorities at the time. The Syrian people will always remember that. So to take over Aleppo It also means taking the commercial capital of Syria. Damascus is the political capital, but Aleppo is the commercial capital, and this will weaken Syria beyond repair. The French, in their plan of cutting up Syria after World War I, they cut off Lebanon in 1942 from Syria, which blocked Damascus from a sea route. So Beirut, Tripoli, and Saida were traditionally just the port cities of Damascus. And by giving Iskenderun in the north to Turkey in 1930, they practically also blocked Aleppo from its port city. Iskenderun is the port city of Aleppo. That's how the trade would come. And then there was this little small coastal line left for Syria, but any trade, takes longer time to send. You have to go around the borders of Lebanon or around the borders of Iskenderun to get to the sea from Aleppo and Damascus. And so, if they manage to cut off the whole coast, then Syria is landlocked. And it's a recipe for collapse of the state. There's very little landlocked countries that can survive such a thing, especially if they're surrounded by enemies, as is the case with Israel, Jordan, and Turkey being enemies of the Syrian state.
Are these people, or these they so-called HTS, are they receiving help from Israel?
Definitely, they are receiving help from Israel. I mean, we've been watching day after day videos from these Wahhabi death squads on social media, speaking directly to the Israeli government and the Israeli public, telling them that we are friends, we are allies, we will never harm you. And of course, we saw 14 months of genocide inside Gaza of a Sunni population, and these HDS and all these death squads, Wahhabi death squads around the world that talk about religion and saving Muslims didn't shoot one bullet against the Zionist colony. They're only ready to kill the enemies of the United States. That's what they are. And some of the viewers here would remember that at the end of the war in Syria, when the Syrian military was pushing south towards the borders of Jordan and the occupied Golan Heights, that the Israeli military, number one, provided health care to all these Wahhabi death squads that were getting injured inside Israeli hospitals. And we saw Netanyahu and other politicians visit them there. And as the Syrian military pushed all the way to the border of the occupied Golan Heights, thousands upon thousands of Wahhabi death squads were evacuated through the borders of Israel and then eventually flown to Canada and given citizenship. People in Canada may not know that, but they could be walking beside somebody in Toronto or Montreal who was responsible for a mass slaughter, genocide, and mass rapes and gang rapes and looting, and have been given citizenship, just like the Laith occupation force in South Lebanon in the in the year 2000. Many of them were given Canadian citizenship and German citizenship and what have you, or the South Vietnam regime collaborators and all the torturers and so on. They were all given Canadian citizenship. Canada is one of the hubs where all these death squads and fascists across the world, anytime they're defeated, they are hidden there, including the Nazis. And the Ukrainian Nazi leadership was given all citizenship in Canada in the 1940s. This is the world we live in. The West is the safe house for all fascists around the world Wahhabis, Nazis, Zionists. That's where Canada is, where they're all hidden, if anybody want to look for them.
Yeah. And right now, what are we learning from Hezbollah? What are they going to do? And because right now it seems that we had, it's not a ceasefire because Israel is just attacking Lebanon, and I don't know how do you find this ceasefire and how do they feel about it right now, Hezbollah?
Well, I mean, obviously, the ceasefire was signed between the Lebanese government and the negotiators, the American and French. It wasn't even signed directly between the Israelis and the Lebanese because Lebanon doesn't acknowledge the existence of Israel as a state. And Hezbollah didn't sign any papers. But Hezbollah, has always said that it supports the sovereignty of the government of Lebanon, although it's not really sovereign either. And because so many people criticize it and claim that it's a state within a state, it plays this, publicly, it never stands against whatever the Lebanese government takes as a position. But let's look at it for real. The Lebanese government doesn't exist. There is no president for the country. The prime minister is not elected, is temporary. The Lebanese military is not armed, is not allowed to be armed by the American embassy, and the Lebanese state accepts whatever the U.S. government tells it, or the U.S. ambassador here in Beirut. I think the reason Hezbollah accepted whatever the Lebanese government wanted is twofold. One is to show that it is not against the Lebanese government and or that is illegitimate in that manner. So whatever the Lebanese government wanted, they said, okay, we'll see what happens. And the other part is that they wanted to show the Lebanese public that even if Hezbollah stopped firing at the Zionist colony will continue to attack Lebanon and violate its sovereignty. There was a lot of people, not a lot of people, but there was a lot of loud people in Lebanon that were claiming that, well, Hezbollah started this war by, opening this front of solidarity with the Palestinian people. If it doesn't fire at Israel, Israel would never come to attack us. This is what the tools and mouthpieces of the West here were saying. So here, Hezbollah stopped its attacks and accepted ceasefire. And what happened is that actually the Zionists continued to bombard the Bekaa Valley, the south of Lebanon. They were flying drones over Beirut all the time, and they are killing Lebanese civilians, unarmed civilians in the south of Lebanon. Now, yesterday, 11 people, the day before, 4 people, and they're continuing to destroy mosques and churches and hospitals. So now, Hezbollah has provided the proof to anyone that had doubt in the Lebanese population or could have been fooled by the propaganda coming from the slaves of America here, that no, it's not about Hezbollah attacking the Zionist colony, that the Zionist colony has interest in destroying Lebanon anyways, whether Hezbollah is there or not, or interest in occupying the south of Lebanon, whether Hezbollah is there or not. So at least from that point of view, it was a good play, okay? Add to it, of course, that Hezbollah suffered huge blows. I mean, I love Hezbollah, and I think they did great, and they defeated the attempted invasion of Lebanon. This is their ability is unmatched, I think, in the annals of decolonization. But at the same time, they suffered huge blows. The assassination of all of the military and almost all of the political leadership of Hezbollah is a huge blow. The pager terrorist attack is a huge blow. I mean, we're talking about 1,500, 2,000 members of Hezbollah specialization units and so forth that were injured and or killed in that attack. So you could imagine if this happened, let's say, to the Russian military in the midst of the war in Ukraine, if 2,000 officers within the military of Russia were taken out in one blow, how would the Russian military survive? That's a big question. I don't think, the only reason I think Hezbollah was able to survive those is because it is still a guerrilla group, meaning it still works in cell formations. It has a hierarchy that is very, half military, half guerrilla, and was able to immediately replace. There's shadows for every person beyond the assistants of each officer or whatever it is. There's always a shadow also that is working behind the scenes, is unnamed. So those things saved Hezbollah from total collapse. But those blows are huge. We can't deny that. And I think looking at what the Israelis did to Hezbollah, this was the last time they can do something like this. They had an opportunity. Remember these pagers and the plan to use these pagers in a terrorist attack was developed almost 10 years ago. It took the Israelis 10 years to put it into action. The Israelis don't have another chance like this. And because they exposed themselves by doing it, any possibility that they were probably going to do it to the Iranians or the Syrians or anybody else is now destroyed. Everybody threw their pagers and walkie-talkies in the garbage and repurchased things directly from China. I want to say one last thing about that, is that I think that President Raisi of Iran, martyred President Raisi of Iran, was also a victim of one of these pager attacks. There's no way that helicopter was downed by accident, and I think one of a pager or walkie-talkie was blown up in the helicopter to take him down, and the Iranian government didn't want to admit it then. But look at how many of the leadership of the Axis of Resistance, military, including Iranian military generals and so on, that have been assassinated over the last year and a half. And then we can recognize that the only ones left that the Israelis didn't kill are President Assad of Syria, Sayyid Abdul Malik Houthi of Yemen, and the Ayatollah of Iran. And I think the Axis of Resistance needs to protect these three persons, because they most probably are on the top priority of the Zionists to assassinate.
Do you think that the Axis of Resistance is learning from what you've mentioned so far, from these attacks on from the assassinations of the political leader and commanders? As you've mentioned, they've killed that in Damascus, they've killed some military commanders, Iranian commanders, and together with some politicians. And with this attack on the part of Turkey, everybody was thinking that Turkey is going to be more reasonable. Well, because the way that they're behaving right now, for me, it's unbelievable. And I cannot believe that Erdogan has decided because we know what's going on in Gaza. We know what's going on in the West Bank. It's not a political game between Iran and Turkey, or even between Iran, Turkey, and Syria. It's much bigger than that. It's a nation that is under threat from Israel. And do you think the Axis of Resistance is learning from what has happened so far, and they can reorganize, they can improve themselves?
Well, I hope so. Look, I have been saying now for a year and a half, since the beginning of this war, that this is an existential war. And Netanyahu himself told the Axis of Resistance that this is an existential war and there is no red lines for him. Now, I think the leadership of the Axis of Resistance was trying to follow the traditional formula of decolonization. You know, you have a war of attrition in Algeria or Vietnam against a much stronger imperial power. It takes you 4 or 5 years, but then you win. And at the cost of 2 million, let's say, that's the average cost of a decolonization, okay? 2 million martyrs. But that doesn't work in this situation. Why? Because although Algeria was important to France, France could exist without Algeria. Although Vietnam is important to the United States could exist as an imperial power without Vietnam. But the land of Palestine is the most important geopolitical position in the world. And all the trade and communication knots in the world have to go through it. And you know, anyone that holds Palestine can project power on all of Western Asia, all of North Africa, East Africa, and East Europe. So if you want to be a global empire, you have no choice but to hold control of Palestine. So, you know, even South Africa, and we talk about apartheid and so on, we can't even compare that to the realities of Israel. The Western elite, you know, could and did give up on the South African apartheid elite, although South Africa presented them with a important geopolitical position, the Cape of Hope in South Africa, control for trade routes there, and a few diamond and other mines. But the South African elite were not an integral part of the ruling structures of the empire. On the other hand, beyond the strategic value of Palestine, the Zionist elite are an integral part of the imperial order. They control most of the media in the West. They control most of the banks. And without them, nobody can get elected, basically. You can't get elected without the approval of those who own the media and or the biggest corporations and banks. So even if there is a leader in a Western country that decides, I want to give up on the Zionist colony, they'll be out of power. Okay, there's no way that this will happen. So as we see, because of this miscalculation by the Axis of Resistance, thinking that they can have a war of attrition against the Zionist colony that may take 5 years, but it will end, they miscalculated. They didn't understand that the whole Western Empire will hinge all its existence on maintaining the Zionist colony, even if it means the collapse of international law, of the international agencies that govern international law that have come into effect since the end of World War II. The West decided that they will risk all of that to maintain the Zionist colony. And they kind of set fire to 100 years of propaganda that the West built about human rights, democracy, and all of that, and equality. The propaganda that, billions and billions, trillions of dollars that the West spent on in movies and TV shows and all blah, blah, blah. They decided they'll burn it all down as long as they can keep control of Palestine. And that is where the miscalculation of the Axis of Resistance was. And I try to get people to understand this. I have no access to people in power in the Axis of Resistance, but on any platform I was in, I was trying to make people understand this. And I hope right now the leadership of the Axis of Resistance understands this reality And if they do, then they need to understand, shift in their military strategy from just a solidarity front to the Palestinians and a war of attrition in a defensive posture to go on the offensive and look at these Wahhabi death squads. They can reach Aleppo in 2 days. Well, I am sure the Radwan forces of Hezbollah can reach Jerusalem in 2 days if they invade. Iran should stop just throwing missiles without a plan of continuing the battle. For instance, Iran still has to respond to the last Zionist attacks and the pager attack that injured the ambassador of Iran in Beirut. Well, they should throw thousands of missiles at the same time and destroy the air force of the Israelis, which is the only thing that the Israelis have that is actually advantageous in the battle. Similarly, all the American bases in Syria and Iraq should be destroyed right now before Trump comes into power, in order to change the balance on the ground before Trump comes into power. Otherwise, Iran will find itself under a huge attack from all the American bases in the region that have yet to be harmed. So no, if Iran waits till Trump comes, I can tell you from this day on, I am 100% sure that they will be attacked, and there will be thousands upon thousands of Iranian martyrs for no reason but this defensive posture that the axis of resistance is taking.
And how about right now the situation in the West Bank and Gaza? What do we know about that, Laith?
Yeah, well, the genocide in Gaza is accelerating, especially that the whole Western media attention is shifted to Syria. And because there's no massive response from the axis of resistance with the exit of Hezbollah from this formula. But the Yemenis are trying to fill some of this gap that Hezbollah left, but it's hard to fill because Yemen is so far away. Yesterday, Yemen announced that they fired multiple ballistic missiles and drones on Tel Aviv region, on the Eilat region in the south, and on the Golan Heights. And we heard also announcements from the Iraqi resistance that they fired a few drones on the Golan Heights. But all of this cannot fill the gap of Lebanon and Hezbollah being right on the border of Palestine. In the West Bank, things are also getting worse. You have the invasions of multiple cities and towns over the last few days, and multiple martyrs, and the kidnapping operations by the Israelis in different towns and cities. And at the same time, we see an increase of the resistance operations in the West Bank. There was an operation 2 days ago, an attack on the Ariel settlement, which is a bold attack, multiple fighters, Palestinian guerrillas, firing on this settlement and engaging the Israeli military at the checkpoint. So there is hope in the West Bank, but again, how much can they do alone? And can they even reach the military capabilities in Gaza? They can't. So, the Palestinian people are right now in their worst situation since the beginning of this genocide. In terms of the support for them globally, militarily, and so on. Even we look at the demonstrations and whatever actions that were in the West 14 months ago, how little in comparison we have now is so if Trump comes into power in January 20th, it is expected that he's going to hand over the West Bank sovereignty to the Israelis. So things are going to go downhill from there for the Palestinians if the balance of power doesn't change on the ground in Western Asia before the coming of Trump.
Before wrapping up, Laith, talk about your activities in Lebanon and about your channel and what has happened to you.
Yes, so Free Palestine TV, where you can find us on the website freepalestine.video. We have right now 20 journalists on the ground in the West Bank, in Jordan, in Lebanon. We're employing all these youth, producing 350 videos in last month. This is an unmatched output, all in English, all giving our audience stories of areas that are seldom covered in the other media, including the activist media. So West Bank, where it's an amazing coverage that nobody else is doing it. And we have the Wartime Cafe, special interviews with personalities here in Lebanon, and Prisoners of War, another show that does interviews with former Palestinian prisoners in the West Bank. And we're translating all the military operation videos from the Axis of Resistance. In the last month, we've got attacks on multiple platforms. We got deplatformed from TikTok with no reason given. Similarly, Odyssey shut down our channels, claiming that it supports terrorism. And we originally had our YouTube page also closed, but we appealed that. We won the appeal, but they still gave us a strike because of an episode from Wartime Cafe, and didn't allow us to post for 10 days. So we had a drop in donations. We are totally dependent on donations from our viewers. We don't get any money from any government or political group or NGOs or anything like that. It's all directly donations from our viewers. And we kind of got in the red last month. We were around $7,000 short. So we appeal, and we appeal now to our viewers to please go to freepalestine.video, donate, join all our social media accounts, share the content. There's nothing like it on the internet. If people subscribe for a monthly donation of $10 or more, $10 to $100, we will have a balance sheet, and we can continue growing this content production. We want to start also covering things in Syria, but at this moment, although we have people that are ready to produce the content, we're not able to cover their expenses. So please donate generously. If we can get more donations, we will immediately start producing content from Syria also.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laith, for being with us today. Great pleasure, as always.
Good to be with you, Nima. Thank you for the invitation.
Bye-bye.